student is headed home after 3 years in captivity in Iran, while an Iranian scientist gets his freedom in return. Investigators are searching for a motive after a gunman killed 3 people on a U.S. Navy base. And CNN takes you to Zimbabwe, where millions of people face food shortages due to the climate crisis. Hello and welcome. I'm Lynda Kinkade. This is CNN Newsroom. Well, we begin with a prisoner swap between the United States and Iran. 2 men are going home after a long time in prison. Earlier Saturday, Iran released U.S. graduate student Xiyue Wang, who was behind bars for 3 years. He was met by the U.S. ambassador in Switzerland after his release. Officials say Wang is in good health and spirits. He's now at a U.S. Army hospital in Germany, but he is expected to head home soon. Wang was convicted of espionage, which a UN panel called baseless. At the same time, the U.S. freed Iranian scientist Soleimani. He was greeted in Zurich by Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. Soleimani was found guilty in the U.S. of trying to illegally export biological material. But a U.S. official says his charges have been dropped. What does the swap mean for the broader U.S.-Iranian relations? For all that and much more, CNN Global Affairs analyst Kimberley Dozier joins us now from Washington. Good to see you, Kimberley.
Good to see you, Linda.
So firstly, Iran and the U.S. have no diplomatic relationship. They haven't had it for decades. Switzerland certainly helped facilitate all of this. And despite seeing these pictures of the U.S. ambassador hugging the American grad student, the U.S. still hasn't confirmed this. Why wouldn't they confirm a prisoner swap?
Well, they haven't confirmed calling it a prisoner swap. They don't like that terminology. But
right.
I got a call from a very elated senior administration official early this morning saying that they'd gotten Wang back, as the administration official put it. And we've been briefed on some of the behind-the-scenes negotiations. From the administration's point of view, this is proof positive that their maximum pressure campaign is working. The fact that they were able to negotiate this through Switzerland. And it is a bit of a glimmer, a ray of hope in what has been a pretty dark picture with escalating tensions, word reported by CNN and others that the U.S. military is considering sending more troops to the Gulf to offset the Iranian military threat. And officials I've been speaking to throughout the region very concerned that the Trump administration had been hitting Iran with a lot of sticks, so to speak, but not offering any real carrots to get them to the negotiating table and ratchet down some of this pressure. I think when you've got the positive move of this swap going on, that's momentum that can be built upon.
So we have heard some response from the U.S. President, Donald Trump, certainly playing up the fact that this American student was taken during the Obama administration after the Iran nuclear deal was done and now released on his watch. I just want to bring up a tweet from Donald Trump talking about this, because he says, obviously taken during the Obama administration, despite that $150 billion gift, referring to the nuclear deal, returned during the Trump administration. Thank you to Iran on very fair negotiations. See, we can make a deal together. So is this a diplomatic victory for Trump? And what could this mean going forward with his relationship with Iran?
Well, in terms of Trump's messaging to his base and to the larger American people, this is a very concrete reward that he can point to from his maximum pressure campaign. He can say that if it weren't for being tough on Iran, they wouldn't have been willing to go this far. However, we in the reporting community were asking a senior administration official this morning, what kind of precedent does this set? There are other Americans like Siak Namazi and his father still being held by Iran. Have you just signaled that you're willing to negotiate by releasing other convicted or accused Iranian prisoners in the United States? And the response we got was, unlike the last administration, the Trump administration didn't pay anything for the Dr. Wang, for PhD student Wang to be released. And they emphasized that and sort of skirted around the question that this has put a price on some of these hostages' heads. On the other hand, when you look at it from the point of people who've been negotiating with Iran over the years, some who are in the kind of harder line camp within national security circles, they say this is what you've got to do with them, be tough, and that's the only way they're going to move in your direction.
It's interesting you make that point of a price on a hostage head, essentially, because in the case of Wang, this was a grad student who is a young father. He's virtually missed half of his young child's life. The Iranian scientist is a renowned stem cell scientist in Iran. When it comes to a prisoner swap, and you've covered them in the past, it's not always like for like, is it? Sometimes you can have a couple of prisoners swapped in exchange for one. Certainly these diplomats have to put a value on them. So in this particular instance, who got the win here? Who got the bigger win, I guess? The bigger victory?
Well, the Dr. Soleimani would not have been arrested unless the U.S. had ratcheted up its sanctions against Iran or anyone doing business with Iran, and also ratcheted up enforcement. I've talked to Treasury officials who say that they've never felt so empowered, that this administration really does understand the value of cutting off commerce. And traveling throughout the region over the past couple months, I've spent time in Iraq, Turkey. You hear that people in the region see that Iran is under threat economically, and that is creating a certain amount of friction and the possibility of movement. Now, the problem is, from the Iranian point of view, they've gotten somebody important back for something very little in return, relatively low-grade. This wasn't a U.S. official that was being held. This was a poor grad student, as you said. So where do you go from here? How do you translate this into some sort of sit down for negotiations? I don't think the hardliners in Iran are ready to say yes to that.
Always good to get your perspective. Thanks so much for that.
Thank you.